Everything you think you know about the dodo is wrong. For centuries, we have pictured this bird as a fat, clumsy creature too stupid to survive. But CT scans of dodo skulls reveal something remarkable. Their brains were proportionally sized like modern pigeons with specialized olfactory bulbs that suggest sophisticated sensory abilities. The first comprehensive brain analysis of the dodo, published in 2016, discovered that these birds were not evolutionary failures at all. Instead, they were perfectly adapted ground dwellers with strong legs that biomechanical analysis of fossil bones shows were built for quick movement through rocky forests. The real story of their extinction is far more complex than you have been told. And it starts with centuries of scientific assumptions that were completely wrong. For centuries, scientists accepted that the dodo was nature's mistake, a bird too stupid to survive. Textbooks described limited cognitive abilities based on outdated assumptions about brain size and island evolution. The scientific consensus painted a picture of evolutionary failure, a creature that had somehow bumbled its way into extinction through sheer incompetence. When researchers at the American Museum of Natural History placed the Oxford dodo head into a high-resolution CT scanner, they expected to confirm what everyone already knew about the bird's mental limitations. The scanning process would finally provide concrete evidence about the brain that supposedly explained the dodo's vulnerability. Scientists prepared to document the neural architecture of what they believed was one of evolution's most spectacular failures. The scanner revealed detailed brain endocasts that showed something completely unexpected about the dodo's cranial structure. Instead of the minuscule brain cavity that centuries of scientific assumptions had predicted, the imaging technology exposed a sophisticated brain structure that challenged every preconceived notion about the bird's intelligence. The three-dimensional reconstructions displayed brain size measurements and regions that bore no resemblance to the primitive cognitive architecture scientists had imagined. Eugenia Gold's team discovered that the brain-to-body ratio matched modern pigeons, birds known for their problem-solving abilities and navigation skills. This proportional relationship suggested cognitive capabilities that paralleled some of the most adaptable urban birds in the world today. Pigeons navigate complex cityscapes, remember hundreds of visual patterns, and demonstrate remarkable learning abilities that have made them subjects of extensive behavioral research. The scans revealed large differentiated olfactory bulbs, a rare trait among birds that typically rely on vision rather than smell for survival. Most avian species possess relatively small olfactory regions, dedicating brain space instead to visual processing centers that help them navigate aerial environments. The dodo's enlarged smell processing centers indicated a completely different sensory strategy, one adapted specifically for ground-based foraging and survival. These findings suggested the dodo possessed sensory adaptations specifically designed for ground-dwelling life on a forested island. The neural architecture revealed a bird that could process complex chemical information from its environment, potentially identifying food sources, detecting threats, and navigating dense vegetation through scent cues that other birds would miss entirely. This olfactory specialization represented a sophisticated evolutionary adaptation rather than a cognitive limitation. Brain tissue analysis indicated cognitive capabilities far beyond the stereotypical portrayal of a dim-witted bird stumbling toward extinction. The neurological evidence pointed to a creature capable of complex environmental assessment, social interaction, and adaptive behavior within its ecological niche. The dodo's intelligence level likely equaled that of pigeons, birds capable of recognizing themselves in mirrors and solving complex puzzles that challenge even some mammals. This revelation forced scientists to reconsider everything they thought they knew about island evolution and cognitive adaptation. The stereotype of the stupid dodo had become so entrenched in scientific thinking that researchers had never seriously questioned whether their assumptions matched the biological reality. But intelligence was only part of the story that needed rewriting. Physical evidence was revealing an equally dramatic transformation. Paleontologists were discovering that centuries of artistic depictions had created an entirely false image of the dodo's body. Popular culture had transformed the dodo into a waddling, obese bird, barely able to support its own weight. An image rooted in 17th century paintings by artists who had never seen a living specimen. Victorian Museum reconstructions amplified these distortions, creating displays that emphasized bulbous proportions and clumsy posture. These artistic interpretations became scientific gospel, influencing textbook illustrations and museum exhibits worldwide for generations. Laser scanning technology applied to the Thiru dodo skeletons housed in Port Louis and Durban museums revealed measurements that contradicted every artistic representation. The high-resolution digital imaging exposed bone structures that told a completely different story about the dodo's physical capabilities. Scientists could now examine skeletal proportions with unprecedented accuracy. The data emerging from these advanced scanning techniques demolished decades of assumptions about the bird's anatomy. The skeletal evidence showed relatively long, powerful leg bones designed for rapid movement through rocky terrain rather than clumsy shuffling. The bone measurements indicated a bird that stood much taller than previous reconstructions suggested, with legs proportioned for covering substantial ground efficiently. The robust leg structures revealed bones capable of supporting dynamic locomotion across uneven surfaces. These were not the stumpy appendages of a helpless creature, but the foundation for a capable ground dweller. The bones indicated strong locomotor muscles capable of quick maneuvering in dense forest environments. The pronounced ridges and grooves where tendons once anchored showed evidence of powerful musculature that could generate rapid acceleration and precise directional changes. The skeletal framework revealed substantial upper body strength despite the absence of flight capabilities. The attachment points suggested a bird capable of maintaining balance on steep volcanic slopes. Three-dimensional reconstructions based on actual bone measurements revealed a taller, leaner bird with an upright posture adapted for mobility on uneven ground. Computer modeling showed how the skeletal framework supported efficient weight distribution and center of gravity control. The reconstructed posture demonstrated a bird that moved with purpose and coordination rather than the ungainly wobbling depicted in popular imagery. Digital reconstructions showed muscle groups that emphasized athletic capability over bulk. The robust leg bones and proportions suggested a bird built for navigating the challenging volcanic landscape of Mauritius. The skeletal structure provided solid foundations for the powerful leg muscles needed to traverse rocky terrain and dense undergrowth. The bone articulation allowed for the range of motion necessary to step over fallen logs and navigate between volcanic boulders. Modern reconstructions now emphasize the dodo's athletic build and hooked beak, abandoning the century-old artistic archetype that dominated popular imagination. The real dodo was a capable ground dweller with long legs and strong musculature, perfectly adapted for life in rocky Mauritian forests. This anatomical correction transforms our understanding from evolutionary failure to successful island specialization, revealing a creature that thrived in its challenging environment for millions of years. But understanding the dodo's true nature required solving an even deeper mystery about its evolutionary origins. DNA analysis has revealed one of the most surprising evolutionary relationships in the bird world, connecting the dodo to a family of birds still thriving today. For decades, scientists debated the dodo's evolutionary origins, with theories ranging from rails to ratites, but genetic sequencing technology finally provided definitive answers. The taxonomic uncertainty had persisted because morphological analysis alone could not resolve the dodo's place in the avian family tree. Researchers proposed connections to everything from waterfowl to ground-dwelling, gallinaceous birds, creating a scientific puzzle that seemed impossible to solve through traditional comparative anatomy. When Beth Shapiro's team successfully sequenced the dodo genome, they discovered genetic markers that placed the bird in an unexpected evolutionary lineage. The molecular data revealed cytochrome B sequences and mitochondrial DNA patterns that aligned with a completely different bird family than anyone had anticipated. These genetic fingerprints provided irrefutable evidence about the dodo's ancestry, finally settling decades of scientific debate through hard molecular evidence. The genetic analysis confirmed that the dodo belonged to the Columbidae family, making it essentially a giant flightless pigeon that had evolved on an isolated island. The DNA sequences showed clear phylogenetic relationships to modern doves and pigeons, transforming our understanding of what the dodo actually represented in evolutionary terms. This revelation meant that every park pigeon shared common ancestry with the famous extinct bird of Mauritius. The genetic distance between modern pigeons and the dodo proved surprisingly small, indicating relatively recent evolutionary divergence. Its closest living relative turned out to be the Nicobar pigeon, a beautiful, strong, flying bird that demonstrates what the dodo's ancestors might have looked like. The Nicobar pigeon's iridescent plumage, powerful flight capabilities, and robust build provide a living window into the dodo's pre-extinction evolutionary heritage. These birds inhabit small islands across Southeast Asia, showing how pigeons successfully colonized isolated territories throughout the Indo-Pacific region. The Rodrigues solitaire, another extinct flightless bird, shared this evolutionary pathway, suggesting that multiple pigeon species independently lost flight on the Mascarene Islands. Both species followed parallel evolutionary trajectories, abandoning aerial capabilities in favor of ground-based adaptations. This convergent evolution demonstrated how island environments consistently favored similar adaptive strategies among related bird lineages. Genetic evidence indicates that flightlessness evolved after the ancestral pigeons colonized Mauritius, though the ancestors likely remained capable of flight for considerable time after lineage separation. The dodo solitaire lineage separated about 23 million years ago, while the Mascarene Islands themselves are less than 10 million years old, suggesting a complex colonization history. This timeline reveals how island environments can drive rapid anatomical changes when environmental pressures shift dramatically. The 2024 analyses have refined this relationship, proposing a subtribe Rhyphina that includes both the dodo and Rodrigues solitaire within the pigeon evolutionary tree. The dodo represents a successful evolutionary experiment in which flying pigeons adapted to island life by trading flight for ground-dwelling specialization. This genetic framework shows that the dodo was not an evolutionary dead end, but rather a highly specialized member of one of the most successful bird families on Earth. But the dodo's role in its island ecosystem extended far beyond its remarkable evolutionary adaptations. The dodo's ecological influence shaped the entire forest ecosystem of Mauritius through its feeding habits and seed dispersal activities. The dodo's diet included fallen fruit seeds, nuts bulbs, and roots processed through a massive gizzard filled with gastroliths, stomach stones that ground tough materials into digestible fragments. This powerful internal grinding system allowed the bird to extract nutrients from foods that other animals could not process effectively. The gizzard functioned like a biological mill, crushing hard shells and fibrous plant matter with remarkable efficiency. A controversial hypothesis emerged suggesting that the tambalacoke tree, also known as the dodo tree, depended entirely on the dodo for seed germination, with the bird's digestive system breaking down the tough seed coats. This theory proposed that the tambalacoke's thick-walled seeds required passage through the dodo's acidic gut environment to weaken their protective coating enough for germination to occur. The hypothesis gained widespread acceptance because it offered an elegant explanation for both the tree's rarity and the dodo's ecological importance. Bone histology and CT imaging revealed the dodo's gizzard structure, showing how gastroliths helped process hard foods like seeds and even shellfish. The muscular walls of the gizzard contained specialized ridges that worked in conjunction with the swallowed stones to create tremendous grinding pressure. Cross-sectional analysis of preserved gizzard remains showed evidence of crushed shell fragments and partially digested plant material, demonstrating the organ's remarkable processing capabilities. Contemporary accounts describe the birds intentionally swallowing rocks to aid digestion, a behavior that linked them to the broader seed dispersal network of Mauritius. Dutch sailors observed dodos selecting specific types of stones from riverbeds and coastal areas, choosing rocks with particular shapes and hardness levels that maximized grinding efficiency. This selective behavior indicated a sophisticated understanding of how different stone types affected digestive performance. However, later research challenged the obligatory mutualism theory, showing that tambalacoke seeds could germinate without gut passage and that other species contributed to seed dispersal. Controlled germination experiments revealed that mechanical scarification could achieve the same seed coat weakening that passage through the dodo's digestive system supposedly provided. Alternative dispersal agents, including giant tortoises, fruit bats, and even ocean currents, proved capable of moving and processing tambalacoke seeds. Studies revealed a diverse community of frugivores, including the Mauritian bulbul and flying fox, suggesting that the dodo was part of a complex ecological web rather than a single critical relationship. These other species possessed their own specialized seed processing capabilities and dispersal patterns that overlapped with the dodo's ecological role. The loss of the dodo did disrupt seed dispersal networks, but the cascading effects were more nuanced than the simple tambalacoke story suggested. While the dodo was not the sole savior of the tambalacoke tree, it served as an important ecosystem engineer whose loss contributed to broader ecological disruption on Mauritius. This delicate ecological balance had persisted for millions of years, creating a stable island ecosystem where the dodo thrived as a perfectly adapted ground-dwelling specialist. But this ancient stability would prove catastrophically vulnerable when external pressures arrived on Mauritius. When Dutch sailors first encountered Mauritius in 1598, they documented a bird that had thrived in an ecosystem without the predation pressures found on continental landmasses. The dodo's extinction resulted from a convergence of factors that created an ecological disaster, challenging the simple narrative of humans hunting a stupid bird to death. The dodo had evolved specialized adaptations for island life, including ground nesting behavior that involved laying single eggs in shallow forest floor scrapes. This reproductive strategy had proven successful throughout the bird's evolutionary history, representing countless generations of adaptation to an environment where the forest floor provided the safest possible location for raising young. The real catastrophe began not with hunting, but with the introduction of invasive species that the dodo had no evolutionary defense against. Dutch, Portuguese, and later French colonists brought entire ecosystems of European and Asian animals that fundamentally altered Mauritius. Rats, pigs, macaques, dogs, and goats accompanied human settlers, creating a perfect storm of predation pressure on dodo eggs and young birds. These mammals possessed hunting instincts and foraging behaviors that had never existed on Mauritius before human arrival. Ground nesting behavior that had been successful for generations became a fatal vulnerability when faced with mammals that actively sought out nests. Pigs systematically rooted through the forest undergrowth, destroying eggs and consuming newly hatched chicks before they could develop defensive capabilities. Rats climbed into nesting sites and devoured eggs, while macaques used their intelligence and dexterity to locate and raid even well-hidden nests. The dodo parents had no behavioral responses to these threats because their species had never encountered such predation patterns. Habitat destruction compounded the problem as humans cleared forests for agriculture, reducing the dodo's available territory and food sources. Colonists established sugar plantations and timber operations that eliminated vast sections of native forest where dodos traditionally foraged and nested. The remaining forest fragments became isolated patches that could not support sustainable dodo populations. Introduced plants also began displacing native vegetation that provided essential food sources for the birds. Contemporary accounts document how quickly these combined pressures overwhelmed the dodo population, with the birds unable to adapt to multiple simultaneous threats. Dutch sailors reported abundant dodos during initial colonization, but within decades, sightings became increasingly rare. The species faced reproductive failure from nest predation, habitat loss that reduced carrying capacity, and direct human hunting pressure simultaneously. No single factor alone might have caused extinction, but the convergence created an insurmountable challenge. The last widely accepted sighting occurred around 1662, though debates persist about whether some reports refer to red rails rather than actual dodos. The dodo's extinction demonstrates how island species face catastrophic vulnerability when multiple human-introduced pressures converge simultaneously. This complex extinction pattern reveals fundamental truths about how ecosystems function and what happens when millions of years of evolutionary balance are disrupted in mere decades. The dodo story is a testament to how science reshaped our view of extinction and evolution. Brain scans revealed intelligence matching modern pigeons, and skeletal analysis showed an athletic bird adapted for its forest environment. Genetic sequencing confirmed this flightless giant belonged to the pigeon family, representing successful island specialization. Today, de-extinction efforts like editing Nicobar pigeon genes highlight that bringing the dodo back necessitates rebuilding the entire ecosystem, as Mauritius has lost 98% of its forest cover. This emphasizes the fragility of island life and the cascading consequences of human ecological disruption.